Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of a DC x Marvel universe where he has a creation system for video games. He creates Devil May Cry at the start. What other video games is he gonna create?
DC Marvel, I have video game creation system. Create Devil May Cry. Chapter 1. The Launch Morning. I woke up with sunlight spilling through the wide glass window, warm and heavy across my face. The sheets were tangled around my legs. My back ached faintly from too many late nights hunched over a monitor, debugging, rewriting, retesting. 25 years. I sat on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on my knees, head hanging low for a moment as the weight of it all settled in. 25 years in this strange merged world, where New York shared a skyline with Gotham, where Metropolis news anchors debated Stark Industries' newest weapons, where Wayne Enterprises partnered with SHIELD on infrastructure modernization projects. I rubbed my temples and exhaled slowly. The room was quiet except for the hum of the city outside. It had taken a long time to get here. When I first woke up in this universe, games didn't exist. Not one console, not one arcade. Entertainment meant theaters, live sports, and the occasional holographic Stark Expo demo. I changed that, little by little. My first project was a small rhythm game to test the market, then an adventure title based on Greek myths. And now, after years of planning, Devil May Cry. I glanced at the wall clock. 6:47 a.m. launch day. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Dozens of notifications, messages from the development team, from marketing, from suppliers checking delivery statuses. Everything was in motion. I was about to push something new into a world that had never seen digital demons, red-coated hunters, or gothic combat choreography. Before I could reach for the phone, a soft chime echoed in my mind. Ding! My fingers froze midair. What the hell? I muttered, glancing around. The sound wasn't from any device. It was inside my head. Then a voice followed, calm but oddly cheerful. Host, I am here. I blinked once, frowned. The fuck, a system. Host, yes. I, the system, am here to help you on your way through the world of Marvel and DC. It replied with the kind of politeness you'd expect from an automated assistant that didn't realize how weird it sounded. I leaned back a little, running a hand through my hair. You're 25 years late. Oh, host, I bumped into a black cat and took the long way, the voice said. I let out a dry laugh. You bumped into a black cat? I shook my head. Fine, whatever, you're here now. What do you even do? You create games. The more important people in Marvel and DC who play your games, the greater the rewards you receive, it said matter-of-factly. I raised an eyebrow. So you're saying, if Superman plays Devil May Cry, I might get Dante's weapons? Kinda, obviously. It's a little harder than that, but you get the idea. On top of that, host, if you get good enough, you can even summon characters like maybe Dante or Virgil. If you create more games like Black Myth, Wukong, or God of War, you could gain access to beings like Kratos, Zeus, or Thor. My pulse picked up. The possibilities were ridiculous, exciting, dangerous, maybe, considering this world already had enough gods and monsters, but still. My lips curved into a grin. Now that sounds worth working for. Good luck, host, the voice said, then faded from my mind, leaving only silence. I exhaled slowly and stood. All right, I said aloud, stretching my arms. Let's make this launch perfect. By 8 o'clock, I was in my office. The building wasn't anything glamorous, just a modest glass and steel structure in the lower half of New York, a few blocks from the Baxter Building. I liked the location. Central enough to attract talent, quiet enough to avoid paparazzi or superhuman chaos. Employees filled the open-plan workspace, all moving fast but focused. Monitors glowed with code and 3D models. Someone was fixing texture bugs on Dante's coat. Another was reviewing the final soundtrack mix, distorted guitars, sharp and rhythmic. Morning, boss, said Julia, my lead developer, without looking up from her screen. The Steam servers, the Stark servers are synced. We're running the pre-launch stability test now. Good, I said, walking past her desk. Make sure the frame rate doesn't dip below 60 on the mid-range setups. Already capped and optimized, she said with a small grin. You taught us well. I smiled faintly and stopped by her desk. You're running on the prototype Stark chips, right? Yeah, Tony's tech department sent over the hardware yesterday. They wanted to see what independent software could do with their neural processors. I chuckled. That means he's interested. Keep the build running clean. If Stark likes the result, he'll talk about it publicly. Julia nodded quickly. I'll double-check everything. I moved on, scanning the rows of desks. Most of my people were young, mid-20s, early 30s, brilliant coders and designers who'd grown up on movies and comics, not games. To them, this medium was new territory. To me, it was old mastery reborn. By 9, the office filled with the steady rhythm of keyboards and quiet conversations. I opened my laptop in my glass-walled office overlooking the floor and started reviewing the marketing feed. Devil May Cry's teaser had already reached 500,000 views overnight. Hashtags were trending on the local networks. DMC, Red Hunter, New Age Gaming. Even the Daily Planet had published a small article, New Entertainment Medium Takes the Industry by Storm. I leaned back in my chair, satisfied. Then my intercom buzzed. Sir, there's a call for you. Mr. Wayne's office, my assistant said through the speaker. I straightened immediately. Patch it through. A moment later, the calm, deep voice of Bruce Wayne filled the line. I've been hearing about your project, he said. A video game, right? That's right, I replied, keeping my tone polite. Interactive entertainment through digital systems. Players control characters in simulated environments. I read your file, he said. Interesting technology. You've been making headlines in both business and defense circles. People are saying your engine could have military applications. I smiled faintly. I prefer to keep my tools civilian, Mr. Wayne. Games are enough for me. A pause. Then, that's good to hear. Still, I'd like to try it myself. I've always been curious about innovation. Of course, I said. I can have a copy delivered to you personally before the public launch. Appreciated. The line went quiet for a moment, before ending with a soft click. I leaned back again, thinking. Bruce Wayne testing Devil May Cry. If the system's rules were real, that would probably count as high-tier engagement. I smirked to myself. Guess we'll see how much Dante's guns cost in system currency. By noon, I gathered the department leads in the main conference room. Screens displayed build statistics and final patch notes. Today's the day, I said, standing at the head of the table. We've worked for 3 years. Every frame, every animation, every combo string matters. This is our chance to prove gaming is more than a gimmick. Julia raised her hand. Server capacity stable. We can handle 10 million concurrent users. After that, it'll slow down. Good. If we hit that number, it's a good problem to have, I said. What about PR? Scheduled appearances, said Max, head of communications. You're on the StarkTech network at 6, then the Daily Planet broadcast at 7. Wayne Enterprises will be streaming from Gotham around the same time. Perfect, I nodded once. Let's make this clean. No delays, no excuses. Everyone nodded back, some smiling with exhaustion, others with quiet pride. When the meeting ended, I walked out to the balcony connected to my office. The skyline spread out before me, Avengers Tower to the north, LexCorp's headquarters glinting faintly in the distance. Somewhere out there, Superman was probably patrolling the skies. Spider-Man might be swinging through the alleys below. Both heroes and villains coexisted in this strange, stitched world, and for now, I was just one more civilian trying to make something new. I pulled my phone from my pocket and checked the time. 2:17 p.m., 4 hours to launch. Ding! The voice returned. Host, metrics updated. Interest detected from Wayne Enterprises, Stark Industries, and SDAR Labs. That fast, I murmured. Yes, if you succeed in converting one of them into active users, your system integration level will rise. Keep creating. I grinned faintly. Yeah, I plan to. Evening came with restless energy. The office buzzed with anticipation. Screens around the workspace displayed live countdowns, 10 minutes to launch, then 5, then 1. I stood before the main server console. Everyone ready? Ready, voices called back in unison. I hit the key. The room filled with a soft electronic hum as the servers activated. The Devil May Cry launch page went live. Within seconds, the numbers began climbing. 5,000 users, 10,000, 50,000. I refreshed the dashboard. The player count rose so fast the counter lagged. Julia gasped from her station. Sir, Stark just posted a video. He's playing it right now. I turned toward her screen. On the feed, Tony Stark sat in a minimalist room, wearing his trademark sunglasses and holding a controller. Let's see what this video game thing is all about, he said to the camera. If this guy made it, it's probably got style. The chat exploded. Viewers multiplied by the tens of thousands. A moment later, another notification appeared. Wayne Enterprises, live testing stream. I smiled slowly. Well, I said, folding my arms, that's 2 billionaires in one evening. By midnight, the city lights shone like constellations. The launch had exceeded every forecast. Over 30 million downloads. Reviewers called it revolutionary. People across both universes, heroes, scientists, soldiers, civilians, were talking about it. I sat back in my office chair, watching the metrics scroll across the monitor. The corner of my mouth twitched upward. Ding! The system's voice sounded again. Host, your influence rating has increased. Reward available. Ebony and Ivory, Dante's twin pistols. I leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly. Really? Check your inventory, it said. A small holographic panel materialized in front of me. There they were, sleek, polished, perfectly rendered weapons, floating in faint blue light. I reached out instinctively, and they solidified in my hands. Cold metal, real weight. I exhaled quietly. Guess this world's about to get a little more interesting. Chapter 2, The Kid from Queens. The sun rose slow over the city, streaks of gold cutting between the tall buildings of Manhattan. I stood at the window of my penthouse suite, coffee steaming in hand, the morning news buzzing faintly in the background. My face was everywhere, interviews, tech reports, even morning talk shows. Overnight, Devil May Cry had changed everything. The industry, the economy, even the way people thought about entertainment. Tony Stark had streamed himself playing. Bruce Wayne had written a press statement. Lex Luthor, surprisingly, had offered a formal congratulation on technological advancement. I sipped my coffee, half listening, half amused. Fame didn't interest me much. Influence did. Influence made things move faster. It bought time, attention, and access. I put the cup down and picked up my red jacket from the chair. Today was scheduled differently. Not another meeting with suits, not another network call. Today, I was visiting a high school in Queens, Midtown High. I checked the schedule again. A motivational speech. A corporate outreach gesture, the PR team had called it. I had agreed mostly because of curiosity. I knew who went there. By 9 o'clock, my car pulled up in front of the modest brick building. Students crowded near the gates, holding phones and talking loudly. Teachers tried to keep order, but it was clear the event had drawn attention. The principal, a balding man in his 50s, greeted me at the entrance with a nervous smile. Mr. Crimson, thank you so much for coming. We're honored. The students have been talking about Devil May Cry non-stop since last night. I shook his hand. Glad to hear it. Hope I can say something useful. He led me into the gymnasium where the assembly was set up. Rows of students filled the bleachers, chatter echoing until the microphone crackled. I stepped up to the podium. The noise died down. Hundreds of faces looked back at me. Among them, I spotted him easily, brown hair, tired eyes, a shy expression. Peter Parker sat in the middle row, his backpack at his feet. I smiled, resting one hand on the podium. "Good morning, everyone." A few students clapped awkwardly. I continued, voice clear and steady. "I'm Crimson. I make video games. But that's not really what I'm here to talk about. I want to talk about work. Hard work." I paused to let the words settle. People think success happens fast. It doesn't. It's built piece by piece over years. You fail, you get up, you fix it, you do it again. That's how anything worth doing gets made. I shifted slightly, looking around. And another thing, teamwork makes the dream works. A few chuckles spread through the crowd. No one builds something great alone. You need others. You need to trust, argue, fix things together. That's what makes things move. The principal nodded approvingly from the side. I leaned forward slightly. Now, I promised my team I'd make this visit special. So after school, one lucky student will get to meet me personally and play Devil May Cry face to face. That got everyone's attention. Murmurs spread across the gym. Students nudged each other, whispering, glancing toward the teachers. I caught Peter's quiet, surprised look. "Study hard," I said with a small grin. "You never know what might come out of it." The assembly ended with polite applause. I shook a few hands, took photos with students, and spent the next hour talking to teachers about innovation in youth technology. It was all standard PR talk, but I didn't mind. They were good people. They cared about their students. Later in the day, my assistant texted me. Principal selected a student for the one-on-one meeting. I smiled, checking the message. The name was what I expected. Peter Parker. After classes ended, the school library was cleared for the session. A single desk with 2 monitors and 2 controllers sat ready. I was already there, leaning back in the chair, scrolling through feedback on my tablet when the door opened. "Mr. Crimson," a voice asked, hesitant but polite. I looked up and smiled. "Peter Parker, come on in." He stepped forward, slightly nervous, adjusting the strap on his bag. "It's an honor to meet you, sir. I saw your speech earlier. It was cool." I chuckled lightly. "Glad to hear it. You play games." "Not really, not like this. But I read about yours. It looks amazing." "Then let's fix that," I said, motioning to the seat beside me. "Sit down, let's play." Peter sat beside me, still a little unsure. I handed him the controller and loaded up the first mission. The game's opening cinematic rolled, Dante walking through the rain toward the demon-infested city. Peter's eyes widened at the animation quality. "Wow, this looks real," he said. "How did you make the lighting work like that? The reflections move exactly right." "Combination of shaders and path tracing algorithms," I explained. "You'll get the hang of it. Try a combo." He pressed the buttons carefully, then smiled when Dante spun the sword midair. "This feels natural, like instant response time." "That's the goal. You think about it, the system follows. It's about control." He played with growing confidence, asking questions about the mechanics, the coding, the story. I answered each one patiently. His curiosity was sharp, bright, and genuine. It reminded me why I liked talking to smart kids. 2 hours passed, faster than I expected. Peter set the controller down, grinning. "That was honestly the most fun I've had in months. Thank you." I stood, stretching slightly. "You're good at picking things up fast. You ever thought about working in software?" He shrugged, modest. "I like science more, I guess. Physics, engineering. But games, oh wow, that was really something." I looked at him for a moment. The shy kid act was convincing, but I could see the sharp focus underneath. The way his reflexes moved just a bit too fast. The way he shifted his balance unconsciously after each combo, like his body was used to motion. I smiled faintly. "You're Spider-Man." He froze. The color drained slightly from his face. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His fingers tightened on the edge of the desk. I kept my tone calm. "Relax. I'm not going to tell anyone. How do you? He stammered quietly. I shrugged lightly. Doesn't matter, I just know. You don't need to worry about me. He stared at me, unsure whether to run or argue. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver card. Give this to the Justice League and the Avengers. Tell them to play. They'll know what to do. Peter blinked, still stunned. You want them to play your game? Exactly, and tell them it's important, I said, handing him the card. Then, before he could react, I added, inside is $1 million. He looked down, shaking his head. I can't take that, sir. I can't accept money like that. It's not right. Peter, I said evenly, help Aunt May with the bills. You're doing too much alone. You deserve a break. He looked up sharply, eyes wide. How do you? I smiled faintly, cutting him off. Besides, it's an honor to meet Spider-Man, the tragic hero. He looked lost, confused, like the world had tilted slightly. I didn't wait for him to recover. I gave him a small nod, turned, and walked out of the library. Behind me, I heard his voice, soft but full of disbelief. Tragic hero. But by the time he stood to follow, I was already gone. The hallway was quiet as I stepped outside into the fading light. The air smelled faintly of rain. Ding! The voice came again in my head. Host, player database updated. New high-tier participants detected. Peter Parker, Tony Stark, Robin, Nightwing, Wally West, and several other young heroes. System evaluation complete. I smiled slightly, walking toward my car. What's the gain this time? Reward, physical strength, Lady Class. Human capacity enhanced to monster fighting levels. Secondary reward, Dante's weapon, Coyote, added to inventory. I flexed my hands slightly, feeling the faint surge under my skin. Stronger, faster, more durable. I couldn't help but grin. Good day's work. The driver opened the car door, but I waved him off. I wanted to walk a little longer. The city lights were flickering on one by one, and the streets buzzed with evening life. Somewhere far above, maybe Spider-Man was already swinging through the skyline again, thinking about the strange man who knew too much. I pulled out my phone and dialed my assistant. She answered immediately. Sir. Transfer double bonuses to all employees, I said. Every department. They earned it. And take every cent of my personal profit from Devil May Cry this month, put it into advertising expansion. Global. I want it everywhere. Understood, sir. That's a lot of funds, you sure? Yeah, I said simply. We're not slowing down now. I ended the call, sliding the phone back into my pocket. My reflection passed by a store window, red jacket, easy smile, the look of someone who had built something real. The world was changing fast, and I planned to stay ahead of it. Chapter 3. The Monkey King Arrives. 1 month passed faster than I expected. Between interviews, product expansions, and the flood of media attention, my schedule became a blur of motion. Devil May Cry had changed everything. Over 100 million players across the planet were now part of my creation. Heroes, civilians, students, soldiers, even government officials. The name, Crimson Studios, had gone from niche recognition to a household term. New York, Gotham, Metropolis, London, Tokyo. Every major city had storefront banners, advertisements, and massive screens showing Dante slicing through demons. I had received countless offers, investors, partnerships, even a few discreet requests from governments wanting to repurpose my engine for combat simulations. I refused every one of them. I had enough capital. My independence was what made me strong. The system rewards had been steady. 1% of Dante's strength might not sound like much, but it was enough to notice. My body felt sharper, more balanced. My reflexes were faster. Even casual movement came smoother, as if instinct and power had settled into perfect rhythm. Alongside it came new weapons, Virgil's Yamato, Dante's Rebellion, and a few lesser ones. Each time I checked my inventory, the sight made me smile. But today was another launch day, another milestone. Black Myth, Wukong. I stood in the main conference hall of Crimson Studios as the final countdown ticked on the wall-mounted display. The developers were gathered, hundreds of them. Everyone looked tired, yet proud. The last few weeks had been relentless, late nights, energy drinks, debugging marathons, but the work had paid off. The screen behind me showed the golden title, Black Myth, Wukong, the Monkey King himself, recreated in painstaking detail. His staff, his fur, the mountain peaks of ancient China rendered with precision. "All right," I said loudly, looking over the team. "You all know the deal. This one matters even more than Devil May Cry. We set the bar once. Let's raise it again." Julia, my lead developer, laughed softly. "You make it sound like we slept since last time." "You didn't," I said, smiling. "That's why you're the best." The others chuckled, a few clapping quietly. I walked toward the main console. "Upload servers live." "All clear," said one of the engineers. "Data centers synced across Starknet, LexCloud, and WayneLink. No bandwidth issues." "Good marketing." Max raised his tablet. "Already viral. Hashtags trending in 40 countries. Pre-orders broke 10 million before launch." I nodded once. "Then let's not waste time." The room went still. The clock hit noon. "Launch it." The engineer hit the key. The lights dimmed slightly as the main screens flickered, showing real-time connection numbers. 10,000, 50,000, a million, then 10 million in minutes. I exhaled slowly, watching the digits climb. "That's faster than DMC," I said. Julia leaned forward, eyes wide. "It's not just faster, it's doubling every minute." The chat feeds from players scrolled endlessly, filled with astonishment. People were already praising the design, the smooth combat, the mythology, the soundtrack. The reviews came in within an hour. "Masterpiece, revolutionary, the future of entertainment." Even Tony Stark had posted a clip on his personal network feed. "So this guy made another one," he said, controller in hand. "Somebody tell him to stop raising the standard. My holograms feel lazy now." That single post sent the numbers soaring higher. I laughed quietly. He's good marketing. By the end of the first day, the number was over 10 million. 10 million copies sold online in less than 24 hours. I walked through the workspace, hands in pockets, smiling faintly as I passed each department. "Good work," I said to one team. "The lighting engine held perfectly." "Thanks, boss," one of the artists said, beaming. "You think this'll hit DMC numbers?" "It'll beat them," I said confidently. They cheered softly, then got back to monitoring the live data. I went to my office, closed the door, and sat down behind the glass desk. My reflection stared back at me from the screen as I opened the analytics panel. The player count was still climbing. The system's faint hum reached my mind again. Ding! Host performance review complete. New player distribution. Global saturation 38%. New high-tier users include Diana Prince, Bari Allen, Victor Stone, Arthur Curry, Clark Kent, and Natasha Romanoff. I raised an eyebrow slightly. So the gods joined the fun too. Reward calculated, the voice continued. Current gain, 1% of Dante's physical strength. Weapon addition, Virgil's Mirage Edge, Dante's Lucifer. Congratulations, host. I could feel the faint energy rush through me again. My muscles felt denser, posture sharper. The weapons appeared within my mental inventory, their design exactly as I remembered. I smiled quietly, opening my laptop again. The satisfaction wasn't only from the power, it was from the success. Every launch went smoother, larger, stronger. My assistant knocked lightly on the door. "Sir, should I bring the press briefing in now?" "Give me 10 minutes," I said, still reading the screen. She nodded and left. Outside, I could see the skyline of New York glowing with advertisements. Huge screens showed Wukong standing against the storm, the staff spinning in slow motion. Below it, news tickers scrolled live sales updates. It was working perfectly. By afternoon, the press event began. Rows of reporters filled the hall, cameras flashing. I stood at the podium again, wearing my usual black shirt and red jacket. A Daily Planet reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Crimson, Black Myth sold 10 million copies in one day. What's next for your studio?" I smiled. "We keep building. This isn't the end. We're working to make each title feel alive, to give people something worth their time." A Stark Network journalist spoke next. "Tony Stark said your engine performs better than most military-grade simulation software. Have you spoken to him about collaboration?" "We've exchanged ideas," I said casually. "But I prefer to stay in entertainment for now. People deserve to play before we think about soldiers using it." That answer earned a few nods from the audience. Another reporter from Gotham Gazette asked, "Wayne Enterprises funded your network infrastructure last month. Are you moving your operations there?" "No," I said plainly. "Wayne's tech team helped improve server capacity. My company stays independent. It's what keeps us creative." The questions went on, mostly about technical details, business forecasts, rumors of movie adaptations. I handled each with polite efficiency. It was the usual cycle. When it ended, I stepped off the stage, shaking a few hands before heading back to my private office. My assistant followed, holding a stack of data sheets. "Sir, you should see this," she said, laying them on the desk. "We hit every market at once. Asia, Europe, the Americas. Even Wakanda's public education network installed the game in their system for cultural analysis." I flipped through the sheets, satisfied. "Good. That'll keep the numbers growing for weeks." She smiled. "You've built something bigger than anyone expected." I glanced up at her and said lightly, "It's only the beginning." She nodded and left. I sat back in the chair again, arms folded loosely. The city outside glowed brighter as night fell. I could hear the hum of the servers through the floor, steady, powerful, alive. Ding! The system's voice came back, quiet and clear. "Host, player count, 126 million and rising. Network resonance detected. Recommend rest and observation." I chuckled softly. "Even you think I should take a break?" "Efficiency requires balance," it said. "All right," I said, standing. "Maybe I'll walk." The night air was cool when I stepped outside. I walked past the building's lit logo and onto the street. Fans were lined up outside stores holding banners, taking photos, streaming live. A few recognized me immediately. "Mr. Crimson," one shouted. "Can we get a picture?" I smiled and stopped for a moment. "Sure." Phones flashed as I stood with a group of college students, most wearing Black Myth shirts. One of them said excitedly, "Man, your game's changed everything. Even Superman plays it." I laughed lightly. I heard that. They cheered, and I waved before continuing down the street. The sidewalks glowed with hollow ads showing combat scenes, Wukong spinning his staff, demons scattering. News anchors, voices played from open store displays, repeating phrases like historic sales milestone and global phenomenon. For a moment, I stopped to watch. Seeing the result of my work displayed so vividly stirred a quiet pride in my chest. Then my phone buzzed. It was Tony Stark again. The message was short. "Nice job, Monkey Man. Let's talk tomorrow about your neural sync system." I smirked and slipped the phone back into my pocket. "Yeah, sure, Stark." Across the street, another billboard flashed a headline. "Wayne Enterprises to integrate gaming interface for AI training research." They were all watching. I walked a few more blocks before heading back to the car. My driver looked surprised when I opened the door myself. "Long day, sir?" he asked. "Good day," I said, settling into the seat. "Take me home." As we pulled away, the city lights reflected off the window beside me. Every direction showed my creation, glowing bright across the skyline. For once, I allowed myself a small moment of quiet satisfaction. Everything was moving perfectly. Chapter 4: Heroes and Games. The next morning came early. The light slipped across the wide desk in my office, painting the polished surface gold. My coffee steamed beside the keyboard. I was reviewing numbers again. Black Myth. Wukong had crossed 40 million players overnight. The global engagement reports were ridiculous, graphs shooting upward like fireworks. But despite the success, something bothered me. I leaned back in my chair and tapped the desk with my finger. "We're still missing the top players," I said quietly to myself. It was true. Most of the downloads came from civilians, students, and minor heroes: Spider-Man, Robin, Nightwing, Kid Flash, a few others. But the big ones, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, the Lanterns, even Captain America, hadn't played yet. They knew of my games. I had seen their names in media comments, but none had joined the network. I needed a reason that could bring them in without pressure. Something public, respectable, and appealing to both worlds. Charity. That word sat cleanly in my mind. A large-scale charity event would do it. Superheroes were drawn to things that helped people. I could make it a campaign: Superheroes Play for Humanity. It would give me the attention of the Justice League, the Titans, the Avengers, and every young team in between. It would also give the company massive publicity and, conveniently, a huge tax write-off. I smiled slightly, pushing the coffee cup aside. Let's make it big. By afternoon, my office became a coordination center. The PR team moved in with screens, tablets, and call lists. Max, the head of communications, paced back and forth, reading messages from Stark Industries, Wayne Enterprises, and SHIELD. "Sir," he said, "if you're serious about a $100 million charity fund, we can reach every major media outlet. But that's a lot of money." "I can afford it," I said. "The profits from Black Myth alone covered 10 times that. Make the transfer public, though. I want people to see this as transparent." He nodded quickly. "And who's the charity beneficiary?" "Children's hospitals. Half of it split between Metropolis, New York, and Gotham. The rest goes to rebuilding projects and scientific education funds." "Perfect," Max said. "That'll definitely pull in the league." Julia entered, holding a tablet. "I've already updated the event build. We'll have demo stations set up for the heroes to play. All versions will be linked online so viewers can see their gameplay live." "Good," I said. "Announce it under my name, Crimson Games Global Hero Charity Event. I want it happening tomorrow night." They exchanged quick glances, but no one protested. By now, they were used to my pace. Within hours, every major channel was running the announcement. News anchors read headlines with animated smiles. Global game developer Crimson has announced a $100 million charity event titled Heroes Play for Humanity, inviting members of the Avengers, the Justice League, the Titans, and Young Justice to participate in a one-night live gaming fundraiser. Evening came, and messages started flooding in. Invitations were being accepted faster than expected. Tony Stark sent a short message first. "You're buying the drinks after, right? Count me in." Bruce Wayne responded through an assistant. "Wayne Enterprises will match a portion of the charity funds. Mr. Wayne will attend in person." Clark Kent replied more politely. "On behalf of the Justice League, thank you for doing this. We'll see you there." That was all I needed. The next day, the event venue stood ready in the heart of New York. The main hall had been transformed. Rows of sleek gaming stations, large monitors suspended from the ceiling, light panels glowing with the words "Heroes Play for Humanity." Dozens of camera crews filled the corners, reporters setting up early. Security was tight. Between SHIELD and Wayne Tech, there wasn't a safer place on the planet that night. I arrived around 5 in the evening, wearing a dark red suit. My employees were already stationed by the systems, checking connections. Everything was running perfectly. By 6, the first guests began to arrive. The young ones came first. Robin, Kid Flash, Superboy, Wonder Girl, and Blue Beetle entered together, led by Nightwing. They were in civilian clothes, but impossible to mistake. Robin's sharp eyes swept the room immediately, assessing exits and layouts like the trained detective he was. "Mr. Crimson," Nightwing said, walking over with a polite nod. "Thanks for the invite." The kids were excited. "Glad to have all of you," I said, shaking his hand. "It's good to see the next generation enjoying themselves." Kid Flash grinned. "Wait, we actually get to play Black Myth before the league. That's awesome." "You'll have your chance," I said lightly. "Just try not to break the controllers." The boy laughed. Minutes later, the older heroes began to arrive. The room's air changed instantly. Superman walked in beside Batman and Wonder Woman, each calm and composed. Flash followed, chatting with Hal Jordan and Barry Allen. The three Green Lanterns were together, Hal, John Stewart, and Kyle Rayner, talking quietly near the entrance. From the Marvel side, Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, and Thor entered together, drawing just as much attention. Cameras flashed constantly. I stepped forward, smiling naturally. "Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you taking time for this." Tony Stark grinned. "You're the only guy who could make both the League and Avengers show up without needing a world-ending crisis." Superman smiled faintly. "It's for a good cause." Batman gave a curt nod. "Let's just keep it organized." "Always," I said. The crowd filled in quickly. By the time the event began, nearly every major hero team was represented. Even the Titans, mentors, were present, observing from the edges. When the first game session started, the atmosphere was relaxed but competitive. Each hero sat at a console, screens displaying Black Myth, Wukong's opening levels. The audience, press, charity representatives, and civilian guests watched the matches broadcast across giant screens above. Superman played carefully, taking his time with the controls. Flash, of course, moved through menus faster than anyone. Thor laughed loudly each time he smashed through enemies with the staff, calling it glorious combat. Tony Stark kept making jokes about teaching artificial intelligence to enjoy kung fu. The young heroes were just as lively. Robin analyzed every move, muttering about pattern timing. Kid Flash kept losing focus and shouting when he missed jumps. Superboy tried to stay serious, but couldn't stop smiling at the animated characters. I moved around the room, greeting groups, answering questions about design, explaining controls. Wonder Woman complimented the mythological accuracy. Batman said nothing, but played longer than anyone else, eyes focused on every frame. The press called it a historic event, heroes playing together, laughing, showing their human side. The donation counters on the large screen climbed rapidly, reaching $100 million, then $120 million as corporate sponsors matched funds. For a few hours, the hall felt lighter than usual. No villains, no world-ending threats, just people enjoying a game for a cause. When the event ended, I took the stage briefly to thank everyone. "Tonight wasn't just about games," I said, keeping my tone even. "It was about people. You all helped make this world better. Every cent raised will go straight to hospitals and education programs. Thank you." Applause followed. Even Batman clapped once. Afterward, I shook hands with Superman, Captain America, and several others. "Good work," Captain America said sincerely. "You gave people hope and fun. Not many can do both." Superman smiled. "You've done something special here." I nodded. "I just made a game. You're the ones who make the world safe enough for people to play it." Iron Man grinned. Yeah, save the modesty. You're one of us now, whether you like it or not." That got a few laughs. It was almost midnight by the time I finally left. The city streets were quiet, the event hall glowing faintly behind me as crews packed up equipment. I loosened my tie and stepped into the night air. The fatigue hit all at once, but so did the satisfaction. The charity had succeeded. The heroes had played. The public adored it. Then I heard it. Ding! The familiar tone rang clear inside my head. "Host, congratulations. High-tier engagement achieved. Total participants include Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern's Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, and Kyle Rayner, as well as multiple Avengers. Condition met. Summon Dante. I froze mid-step. Wait, summon Dante. Confirmed. A pulse of light flickered in front of me. I stumbled back half a step, eyes wide. The glow took shape. A tall figure, red coat, silver hair, twin pistols at his sides, sword across his back. He smirked faintly, eyes sharp and amused. Well, Dante said casually, looking around the street. This ain't hell, so that's a good start. I blinked, feeling my jaw drop slightly. You've got to be kidding me. He stretched his arms lazily. Nice world you got here, lotta energy. You the one who pulled me out. I nodded slowly, still half in shock. Yeah, Crimson. Cool name, he said with a grin. So what's the gig? You got demons to hunt or just a place to crash? I exhaled and rubbed my forehead. My mind raced. Dante, real, physical, standing right here, in this world. My face probably looked ridiculous. I could almost feel the cartoonish shock on it, like a Chibai expression, frozen mid-surprise. He tilted his head. You okay, pal? Yeah, just processing, I said quickly. I looked at him again. The realization hit me like a wave. Dante wasn't just another fighter. He was one of the strongest beings in fiction, half demon, half human, with near limitless potential. If he existed here, he could probably challenge almost anyone. Could you beat Doomsday? I muttered under my breath. He raised an eyebrow. Who's that? Never mind, I said quickly, but my thoughts kept going. Dante could probably fight Doomsday to a standstill, maybe even push higher, possibly take on beings near the top of both universes. The Presence, the one above all, maybe not win, but he'd make it interesting. I couldn't help but grin slightly at the thought. This world's about to get a lot more fun. Chapter 5. The Devil Hunts Doomsday. The morning started like any other, quiet coffee, a review of numbers, and the soft hum of the city beyond the window. I had spent the night checking Dante's new presence in this world. The system confirmed he was permanent, real, not a projection or illusion. He existed physically, his weapons and strength unrestrained. He had crashed on my couch the night before, snoring like he had never heard of volume control. When I woke up, he was already raiding my fridge. Man, this world's got great food, he said with his mouth full of leftover pizza. I had just sighed. You're supposed to be a demon hunter, not a trash compactor. He grinned. You feed me, I fight your monsters. That's fair trade. At that time, I didn't think the words would be tested so soon. By noon, chaos broke out in Metropolis. The first reports came from the daily Planet's emergency network feed. Massive creature attack, unknown origin, casualties rising by the minute. I didn't even need confirmation. I knew who it was. Doomsday. He was tearing through the city like paper. Streets were split apart, cars thrown like toys, buildings shaking with each step he took. Every major hero was already moving. Superman arrived first, slamming into Doomsday with enough force to shatter the clouds above them. Then the rest followed, the Justice League and the Avengers side by side. Wonder Woman's lasso wrapped around the creature's arm, Thor's hammer cracked against his chest, Iron Man's repulsors fired point-blank while Flash struck from every direction. It still wasn't enough. Doomsday was adapting. His body hardened after each hit, energy resistance growing faster than anyone could counter. Superman punched him through a skyscraper, but the monster got back up, skin glowing with reinforced armor-like plates. I watched the live broadcast from my office for several seconds. Civilians were evacuating in panic. The skyline of Metropolis was burning. Dante, I said. He looked up from the couch, still chewing on a sandwich. Yeah. You feel like stretching your legs. He smirked and stood, grabbing Rebellion from the floor. Finally, I was getting bored. Within minutes, we were in the air, carried by one of my custom transports, An advanced hovercraft Stark had quietly loaned me after the charity event. The pilot's seat was empty. It flew on autopilot. Dante leaned against the window, watching the distant glow of battle. "That the guy?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, eyes fixed forward. "Strongest organic creature they've faced. Regenerates, adapts, can't really die." He chuckled. "Sounds fun." I couldn't help smiling a little. "You really don't take anything seriously, do you?" "Not unless it bites first." The craft broke through the clouds, and the city came into view. It looked like a war zone. Craters lined the streets, buildings lay in ruin, and smoke filled the air. Below, the League and Avengers fought together in a desperate push. Superman flew in first, punching Doomsday with everything he had. The creature roared and countered, hurling him through a tower. Wonder Woman followed, her sword slicing into its arm, while Thor struck lightning down from above. Hulk roared as he slammed into the creature's leg, but even that force barely staggered it. Iron Man's voice echoed through comms all over the battlefield. "Containment field at 60%. Someone tell me this thing has an off switch." Then, as the dust cleared, Doomsday roared again. His eyes burned red. He had adapted again. When our hovercraft stopped above the wreckage, I stepped out onto the platform with Dante beside me. The shockwave of another blow from Doomsday nearly knocked us back. Dante grinned. "Guess that's my cue." Before I could reply, Tony Stark's voice came through the comm channel, his armor hovering nearby. "Hey, game kid," he shouted over the noise. "Nice of you to drop by, but you should probably leave this to the professionals." I smirked and pointed beside me. "Yeah, about that. I've got a better professional." Tony looked confused for a second. "You brought a guy with a sword." Dante raised 2 fingers and gave a lazy salute. "Yo." Thor landed beside Tony, hammer crackling with electricity. Another mortal. He should take cover. But before anyone could argue further, Dante jumped. He landed on the cracked street below, coat flaring behind him. Doomsday turned immediately, roaring as if insulted that something new had appeared. The sound was deafening. Dante rolled his shoulders and unsheathed Rebellion. "All right, big guy, let's make this quick." Superman, still recovering from the last blow, called out, "Stay back, he'll kill you." But Dante was already moving. He blurred forward, faster than human eyes could follow, the street shattering under his steps. Rebellion struck once, twice, then again in a dizzying series of blows. Sparks flew, chunks of armor-like bone exploded off Doomsday's body, and the creature actually stumbled back. Flash appeared beside me wide-eyed. What is he doing?" "Winning," I said calmly. Doomsday swung a massive fist, the impact blasting the ground apart. Dante blocked it with one arm, the sheer shockwave splitting the air around them. He smirked, spinning his sword in a clean arc that sliced through Doomsday's arm like paper. Hulk charged in beside them, roaring as he swung his own punch. But Dante was already ahead of him, slamming his heel into Doomsday's chest so hard the monster flew backward into a crater. Iron Man flew over, disbelief in his voice. "You've got to be kidding me. That guy just kicked Doomsday like a soccer ball." Wonder Woman blinked once, tightening her grip on her sword. "He fights like a god." Thor nodded. "Aye, yet I sense no divine power, only pure strength." Dante wiped a bit of dust from his coat. "Man, yesterday you were wondering if I could beat Doomsday," he said, glancing up at me with a grin. "Thought he'd be stronger." I laughed quietly. "Guess you're just built different." He turned back toward the crater where Doomsday was already regenerating, new spikes forming across his body. "You done?" Dante called out. "Because I can do this all day." Doomsday roared and charged again. The ground quaked with every step, but Dante didn't move until the last second. When he did, his movements blurred again, his body splitting into afterimages as he attacked from every direction. The noise was unbelievable, metal clashing, shockwaves bursting through the air, explosions rocking every building within blocks. Superman and Thor joined in, striking from above while Batman coordinated evacuation below. The rest of the heroes formed a perimeter, holding off debris and protecting civilians. Then suddenly, it ended. Dante appeared behind Doomsday, spinning Rebellion once before resting it on his shoulder. Game over. The monster froze, eyes glowing faintly. Then its entire body cracked, glowing red lines splitting across its skin. With one final roar, Doomsday collapsed backward, the ground shaking violently as the body fell still. Silence followed. Iron Man's helmet folded back, his expression stunned. What the hell just happened? Superman floated down slowly, scanning the body with his vision. No life signs. He's down. Dante looked around, shrugging. That was it. Man, I thought he'd last longer. Flash blinked rapidly. That was Doomsday, the same guy who... Yeah, Dante said, waving his hand dismissively. Big ugly monster, not so tough. Thor let out a booming laugh. Ha, I like this one. Wonder Woman approached cautiously. You've done what took entire armies before. Who are you? Dante smirked. Just a guy who likes his job. Batman stood at the edge of the crater, silent. His eyes behind the cowl narrowed slightly. You're not from this world. Good observation, Dante said. Tony Stark turned toward me. Okay, game kid, he said slowly. Where exactly did you find this guy? I smiled faintly. Let's just say he came from one of my ideas. You made him, Tony said, disbelieving. Something like that. Superman looked at me seriously. If you can create beings with this level of power, you need to be careful. This isn't something we can control. I know, I said. He's not a weapon. He's a friend. That's enough. Dante pointed at the crater. Don't worry, Boy Scout. I don't take orders anyway. Superman blinked once but didn't argue. Still, thank you. Dante nodded casually. No problem. As the League and Avengers began tending to the aftermath, rescue operations, structural repairs, civilian protection, I stood beside Dante on the cracked street. He kicked a piece of debris aside and yawned. So, he said, you think that was the strongest thing they've got? I smirked, not even close. He grinned. Good, I like a challenge. By the time the sun set, Metropolis was stabilizing. Doomsday's body had been taken by Joint League Avenger security for containment. The media coverage was everywhere. Unknown warrior defeats Doomsday. New hero saves Metropolis. The man in red. I returned to my office with Dante, who was now demanding more food. You eat like you haven't eaten in a year, I said, watching him stack pizza boxes. He shrugged. Killing monsters burns calories. I laughed quietly. Fair. The system's familiar tone echoed again in my head. Ding. Host achievement complete. High-tier engagement and world event resolution. Reward upgrade. Power calibration synchronization increased. Enhanced summoning capacity unlocked. I nodded slightly, still smiling. Nice timing. Dante looked at me, confused. You talking to yourself again? Yeah, I said lightly, just thinking. He raised an eyebrow, then went back to eating. Outside, the world was already buzzing about him. Governments wanted to know who he was. Heroes were curious. Villains were afraid. And I, standing there watching him devour his fourth slice of pizza, knew one thing for sure. Things were going to get a lot busier. Chapter 6. Visitors from Other Worlds. Morning came with noise. I woke to the sound of reporters shouting through the security gate outside my tower. My phone was vibrating non-stop, notifications spilling across the screen faster than I could swipe them away. Every news network, every channel, every blog, it was all the same headline. Dante from Devil May Cry came to life. The footage from Metropolis was everywhere. Every camera had caught him, the red coat, the silver hair, the impossible strength. The moment where he kicked Doomsday into the crater had already become the most replayed clip of the year. Some people said it was edited. Others said it was proof that my games were more than fiction. I sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through the headlines while drinking coffee. Dante sat on the couch, legs crossed, eating a bag of chips he probably found somewhere. "Guess they figured me out," he said casually, smirking as he watched himself on TV. "Can't blame them. I do look good on camera." I sighed and set the cup down. "You look like a lawsuit waiting to happen." He laughed. "Relax, you'll think of something. You're the smart one here." I rubbed my forehead. "I already have. I'm holding a press conference in an hour. Try not to destroy anything while I'm gone." "Wouldn't dream of it." By 10 o'clock, I was standing on a raised platform in front of hundreds of cameras. The conference hall was packed. Reporters, officials, league representatives, and even a few Avengers in disguise at the back. Security drones floated near the ceiling, keeping order. The noise died when I stepped up to the microphone. I looked calm. My breathing, heart rate, and expression were perfectly steady. The system ensured that. It helped me maintain complete control of tone and face no matter what I said. "Good morning," I began evenly. "I know everyone has questions about the incident in Metropolis yesterday. I've seen the same footage you've all seen. You're wondering if the individual you call Dante is related to my game series, Devil May Cry." A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. I continued, voice steady. "Yes, there are similarities, but allow me to clarify something. All of my games, Devil May Cry, Black Myth, God of War, and others, are based on cultures, histories, and myths from different planets across the galaxy. Each of those worlds has civilizations, species, and heroes who exist beyond Earth's borders." I paused for effect, letting the explanation sink in. "Occasionally, travelers from those worlds find their way here. If any such individuals appear on Earth, they're simply visitors, guests from those distant planets. That's all." The room erupted with questions. Hands shot up. Voices overlapped. "Are you saying Dante is an alien?" one reporter shouted. "In technical terms, yes," I said plainly. "He's from a world that inspired the Devil May Cry series. The details of that world remain classified under interplanetary cultural agreements, but there's no threat to Earth." Another voice called out, "So more of your characters could appear here." "It's possible," I replied. "But as I said, they'd be visitors, not creations brought to life, real beings from their own worlds." Someone else asked, "Did you know he would appear?" I smiled faintly. "No, but I'm glad he did. He saved countless lives in Metropolis yesterday. If he hadn't intervened, Doomsday might have caused irreversible damage." Cameras flashed continuously. Reporters scribbled notes. The system's assistants kept my tone perfectly calm, each word controlled, each gesture natural. "Are you saying," another reporter pressed, "that there could be a connection between your company and extraterrestrial life?" "Not a connection," I said simply. "An inspiration." I ended the session after 20 more minutes of questions, repeating that all my games were cultural adaptations of other planets' legends. The world wanted answers. I gave them just enough to calm them down, and enough mystery to keep them satisfied. By the time I left the hall, the media was already broadcasting my words across every screen in the city. Crimson confirms extraterrestrial origins of game universes. Visitors, not creations. Official statement. The headlines spread fast. People were still skeptical, but the explanation worked better than expected. The system's calm control made sure of that. When I returned home, Dante was sprawled across the couch with a controller in his hand. The Devil May Cry logo flickered on the TV. He was playing himself. I leaned against the doorway and stared. "You're playing your own game." He glanced over, smirking. "Yeah, wanted to see how accurate you made me." "How's the verdict?" I asked. He tilted his head. "Not bad. You got the moves right. I'm cooler, though." I laughed softly. "Of course you are." He paused the game and turned toward me. "So, how'd the press thing go? They buy it?" Completely, I said. You're officially a visitor from another planet. Congratulations. He chuckled. Guess that makes me a tourist. Yeah, I said. A tourist with a kill count. He grinned. Fair enough. I dropped into the armchair across from him, loosening my jacket. The city lights outside the windows shimmered across the skyline. Everything seemed calm again, for now. Then the sound came. Ding! The tone was sharp and clear in my mind. Host update complete. 80% of all heroes and villains on Earth have played Black Myth. Wukong, milestone reached. Reward, summon Wukong. I straightened immediately. My pulse quickened despite the system's attempt to stabilize it. Of course, I muttered. Now him. Dante looked over, eyebrow raised. What now? Before I could answer, the air in front of us rippled. Light expanded in a sphere glowing brighter until the room filled with golden radiance. The energy snapped once, then faded, leaving a figure standing in the center. He was tall, lean, covered in golden fur that shimmered faintly under the light. A circlet gleamed on his head, and his staff, Rui Jingu Bang, rested casually on his shoulder. His eyes glowed faintly red with calm amusement. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King himself. He looked around the room with open curiosity, tail flicking once behind him. Ha, so this is Earth. His voice was calm but confident, almost lazy. Doesn't look like much. Dante stood immediately, hand on his sword. Well, you're not from around here. Wukong looked at him and smirked. Neither are you, I'm guessing. The air between them thickened instantly. They measured each other in silence, both smiling but not friendly. I sighed quietly. Here we go. Dante tilted his head slightly. You swing that stick, or are you just showing off? Wukong twirled the staff once effortlessly. You want to find out? They both moved at once. The impact shook the room. Dante's sword met the staff mid-swing, sparks scattering across the air. The sound of metal on metal rang out like thunder. They grinned simultaneously. Not bad, Dante said, pushing forward. Same to you, Wukong replied easily, flipping backward and landing on the coffee table with perfect balance. All right enough, I said loudly. You break my house, you're paying for it. Dante looked back at me, smirking. He started it. Wukong shrugged. You have a strong friend here. Not many can block that swing. I'm surrounded by children, I muttered. They both laughed. Wukong hopped down from the table, lowering his staff. So, you're the one who brought me here, he said, glancing at me. Your game made me famous, huh? You could say that, I replied. He nodded, satisfied. Then I owe you some entertainment. Dante smirked. Guess that means we're teammates now. Wukong grinned. Only if you can keep up. They stared at each other again, but this time the tension was lighter, mutual respect rather than hostility. Dante pointed at the TV. You ever seen yourself in a video game? Wukong tilted his head, intrigued. A game, show me. Dante tossed him a spare controller. The Monkey King caught it easily, examining it like a weapon before sitting cross-legged beside him on the couch. I watched them both with mild disbelief. Two of the strongest beings in existence, one demon hunter, one divine monkey, sitting in my living room, arguing over game controls. Wukong laughed suddenly as his in-game version performed a perfect combo. Ha, I'm good at this. Dante scoffed. You're playing on easy mode. I'm still winning. Cheater. I rubbed my temples. I'm going to need a bigger house. Hours passed like that. The two of them played through missions, traded insults, and occasionally challenged each other to sparring contests in the backyard. Their personalities meshed strangely well, competitive, sarcastic, but equally confident. At one point, Dante said with a grin, You know, you'd make a great demon hunter. Wukong laughed. And you'd make a decent monkey if you stopped talking so much. They both burst out, laughing again. I watched them from the balcony, sipping another cup of coffee, feeling the vibration of their laughter echo through the room. For the first time in days, the atmosphere felt normal. Ding! The system spoke quietly in my mind again. Host, dimensional stability recalibrating. Entities Wukong and Dante registered as permanent residents. I smiled faintly. Yeah, I figured. Below, the city lights shimmered in the distance. Somewhere out there, people were still talking about the visitors. Governments were forming committees. Scientists were debating interplanetary culture. Heroes were training harder, inspired by what they saw. And here, in my penthouse, two legends from different universes were sitting on my couch, fighting over who was better at their own video game. I exhaled softly, amused. What a strange world. Chapter 7. Another day, another god. The morning light hit my face as I sat at the edge of my bed, rubbing the back of my neck and trying to remember the last time my house was quiet. It had been days since I'd had peace. Not because of work. My company practically ran itself now. But because I lived with two overpowered lunatics who treated my home like an arcade and a battlefield combined. Down the hall, I could already hear the noise. The sound of a controller clicking rapidly, followed by Wukong's loud laughter and Dante's exasperated groan. I stood, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a mug of coffee. No cream, no sugar, no enthusiasm. Just black coffee and the dull hope that caffeine could numb the headache before it started. On the TV in the living room, Devil May Cry 5 was paused. Wukong was leaning forward, tail flicking in amusement as he inspected Dante's in-game model. "Your digital self looks so stiff," Wukong said, tone teasing. "Yeah, well, your game doesn't even have good voice acting," Dante replied with a grin. I walked past them with my coffee. They didn't even notice me anymore. I might as well have been furniture. I sat down in my chair at the far end of the living room. "Don't break anything," I said, voice flat. Dante raised a hand lazily without turning. Yeah, boss." Wukong waved his tail like a lazy salute. "Relax, we're professionals." That was the problem. They were professionals, just not the kind who cleaned up after themselves. Today was the launch of God of War. The marketing had been automatic. Pre-orders sold out within hours, every console system overloaded with downloads. The new generation of players had been waiting for this one, and after Devil May Cry and Black Myth, expectations were beyond reason. I didn't even bother monitoring the analytics this time. I already knew how it would go, trending globally, millions of players, record-breaking numbers. It was formula at this point. Still, I opened my laptop just to check. The first reports were already in. 3 million copies sold within the first hour. I stared at the numbers blankly, then took another sip of coffee. "Figures," I said quietly. Behind me, Dante and Wukong were now arguing about something. "I told you," Dante said, pointing at the screen. "You can't just spam light attacks. You have to mix combos." "Combos are for people who can't hit hard enough the first time," Wukong said, with a grin, slamming buttons. The on-screen Dante character was currently being juggled in the air by a boss. Dante leaned back with a long sigh. "You're actually bad at this." Wukong grinned wider. "You made this game. You made me a beginner. That's on you." I pinched the bridge of my nose and looked at the ceiling. "Please don't break the TV." "Sure thing, boss," Dante called cheerfully, not meaning it at all. Then the familiar tone rang in my head. Ding. Host milestone reached. Universal influence threshold achieved. Reward, summon Virgil. I didn't even blink. Of course it's Virgil. Dante paused mid-sentence and looked over his shoulder. Wait, what? The air in the center of the room distorted again, blue energy swirling as a figure appeared. Tall, poised, silver hair neatly combed back, long blue coat perfectly pressed. Yamato hung at his hip, his expression unreadable. Virgil, as calm and composed as ever, stepped forward, taking in the scene. His eyes swept the room once. Dante on the couch, controller in hand. Wukong laughing as he mashed buttons. And me sitting at the far end, drinking coffee with an expression that probably resembled spiritual exhaustion. The silence lasted 10 full seconds. Then Virgil spoke. I see. Dante grinned. Hey, brother, welcome to paradise. Virgil looked at him slowly. Paradise. His gaze shifted to Wukong, then back to the TV. On the screen, an animated Dante was currently losing badly to a boss fight, while Wukong spammed attack buttons. Virgil's brow twitched slightly. You're letting him play as you. Dante smirked. Yeah, he's learning. I'm winning, Wukong said proudly, still mashing buttons. Virgil exhaled quietly. How expected. He didn't even ask what was going on. He just walked to the other side of the couch and sat down next to them like he had been there for years. Dante grinned and tossed him another controller. Come on, old man. Let's see if you can do better. Virgil caught it without looking. I'll end this quickly. Wukong laughed. You talk like that Dante guy, but with less fun. Virgil's eye twitched again, but he didn't respond. I sipped my coffee. If you destroy the console, I'm throwing all three of you outside. They ignored me. The room filled with the sound of controllers clicking and faintly overlapping taunts. Dante was loud and cocky, Wukong laughed constantly, and Virgil maintained a calm, steady voice as he effortlessly dominated every match. Dante groaned, You're cheating. I'm simply better, Virgil replied without looking away from the screen. Wukong cackled, You're both terrible compared to me. The three of them kept going, and for the first time since all this started, I realized I had completely lost control of my own house. I just sat there, elbows on the table, coffee halfway gone, watching three of the most powerful beings in existence argue about game mechanics. I sighed deeply. I want a refund on life. My phone buzzed on the counter. I reached for it with slow movements, already knowing what it would be. Crimson here, I answered. A familiar voice came through. Max, my communications head. Sir, fantastic news. God of War just passed 15 million copies within 4 hours. That's faster than Black Myth. The servers are stable, and the reviews are already calling it the best narrative title in history. I stared at the ceiling for a moment before replying in the flattest tone possible. Okay, great news, thanks. There was a pause on the line. Sir, you sound tired. I glanced toward the couch, where Dante and Wukong were now yelling over who had the better combo streak, while Virgil calmly continued demolishing both of them. Wukong had somehow flipped the couch pillow at Dante's face. Yeah, I said slowly, just another day in paradise. I ended the call and placed the phone down with quiet precision, then took another long sip of coffee. Virgil eventually looked over his shoulder toward me, expression neutral. You seem displeased. I met his gaze blankly. You think? He said nothing, just turned back to the game and resumed playing. Wukong laughed again as Dante tried to knock his controller out of his hands. Stop cheating, Dante yelled. I'm not cheating, I'm creative, Wukong said, grinning wide. Both of you are pathetic, Virgil muttered. Dante pointed at him. Don't start. You died in your own game. Virgil glanced at him slowly. So did you. I dropped my head into my hands. Please, stop talking. None of them stopped. Hours passed. The sun set. The apartment lights dimmed automatically as night fell over the city. They were still playing. The three of them had moved from Devil May Cry to Black Myth to God of War. Wukong kept commenting on Kratos' attitude, calling him too serious. Dante said he liked Kratos' weapon design. Virgil simply played in silence, finishing each level flawlessly. I stayed at the same spot, half watching, half wondering what my life had become. My head rested against my hand. My coffee was long gone, replaced by a bottle of water I hadn't even opened. Wukong looked up suddenly. "Hey, Crimson," he called. "You make all these games, right? You should make one about us." Dante laughed. "Yeah, that's Cell. The monkey, the devil, and the depressed game developer." I looked at him, tone dry. Hilarious. Wukong grinned. "I'd play it." "Of course you would." Virgil finally put down the controller and stood. "I'm going to meditate. This is too chaotic." Dante smirked. "You mean fun?" "I mean childish," Virgil said simply, walking out of the room. Wukong waved his tail lazily. "He's boring." "He's always been boring," Dante said. I stood up finally, stretched, and looked at the mess. Empty snack bags, 2 controllers on the floor, and my living room halfway destroyed from their friendly energy bursts during the match. I rubbed my temples. "You're cleaning this up before you sleep." "Sure thing," Dante said, obviously lying. "Of course," Wukong added, also lying. I didn't even argue. I was too tired. I walked toward the hallway, muttering, "Next time I'm buying a second house." Behind me, Dante shouted, "Hey, boss, you should make Devil May Cry X Wukong next." "Not happening," I said flatly. Wukong laughed. He's scared we'd break his game. "You'd break reality," I said without turning back. Their laughter followed me down the hall. An hour later, I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling. The apartment was finally quiet, probably because all 3 of them had passed out in the living room. I pulled up my phone again, glanced at the sales report. God of War had already crossed 30 million. Record broken. Again. I shut the screen off. I didn't even feel proud anymore. I just wanted silence. The system stayed quiet this time. No new rewards, no announcements. For once, I appreciated the peace. I lay back, hands behind my head, and closed my eyes. Outside, the city lights flickered faintly, and inside my living room, 3 otherworldly beings were snoring in perfect unison. I exhaled slowly. At least they didn't destroy the house today. Chapter 8, Trade Deals and Lightning. The morning was quiet for about 10 minutes. That was record-breaking for my house. I sat in the kitchen, reading through a few sales reports with Virgil standing nearby. He didn't talk much, didn't move much either, just stood there like a silent wall of calm. It was refreshing. In the living room, the usual chaos was already starting. Wukong and Dante were arguing again, something about who would win in a banana-eating contest. I didn't ask for context. I didn't want to know. I had just taken a sip of coffee when the intercom buzzed. "Sir, Lex Luthor is here," the guard said over the speaker. I blinked once. "Lex Luthor here, why?" He said he wants to discuss an investment proposal. "Send him up." I put the mug down and stood, adjusting my jacket. Virgil followed without being told. He was efficient like that. When the elevator doors opened, Lex Luthor stepped out wearing a perfectly pressed suit, expression composed and polite. He extended his hand. "Mr. Crimson." "Mr. Luthor," I said evenly, shaking it. "I'll keep this brief," he said, stepping inside. "Wayne and Stark have both been fascinated by your visitors. I'm here to offer a partnership, technology, infrastructure, and political cover in exchange for research rights, mutually beneficial." He spoke in that calm, rehearsed tone that made every word sound like a deal being signed. "Sounds professional," I said, leading him into the living room. The second we turned the corner, he froze. There was Dante, shirt half open, sitting cross-legged on the couch with Wukong beside him. They were arm wrestling. The coffee table had been pushed aside. A pile of snack wrappers covered half the floor. Wukong was shouting, "Come on, old man, use your devil powers." Dante grinned. "You first, monkey boy." The table creaked dangerously as their arms trembled. Energy crackled faintly from Wukong's hand, blue fire from Dante's. Lex stared. For 3 full seconds, he said nothing. Then he turned slowly back toward the door. I see you're busy, he said flatly, and started walking out. Wait, I said quickly, following. No, no, please, take them. He stopped, eyebrow twitching. Take them. I nodded seriously. They need supervision. You like studying anomalies. Perfect opportunity. They're strong, noisy, and they never stop eating. I'll even throw in free lifetime observation rights. Lex looked past me toward the living room again, where Wukong had just flipped the couch mid-match. Dante was laughing hysterically. He exhaled slowly. You're serious? Completely. For a moment, he just looked at me. Then, surprisingly, he smiled faintly, the kind of expression a man makes when he realizes he's walking into a problem he can't resist. Fine, I'll take them. My shoulders dropped in relief. Thank you. He adjusted his cufflinks. Expect some noise complaints from my lab staff. They'll get used to it, I said dryly. Wukong called out from behind. Hey, boss, who's the bald guy? Dante laughed. Looks like he hasn't smiled since birth. Lex glanced at them, unimpressed. Charming, he muttered. They'll be out of your hair in 5 minutes, I said, practically shoving a suitcase of their spare weapons toward him. Within minutes, they were gone, escorted to one of Lex's armored vehicles. The moment the elevator doors closed behind them, I stood still in the quiet apartment and exhaled. It was silent, completely silent. I turned to Virgil, who had remained unmoved through the entire exchange. You're staying, I said. He inclined his head slightly. Understood. Finally, peace. By midday, I decided to take advantage of the quiet. Virgil followed a few steps behind as I walked through the city streets. He didn't need to, but I didn't stop him. He was disciplined, controlled, and unbothered by crowds. Having him around was like traveling with a bodyguard who intimidated everyone just by existing. We walked past news screens showing highlights of God of War's global release. Everywhere we went, people recognized me, though most hesitated to approach. Virgil's cold presence had that effect. I stopped by a small cafe. The waitress stammered as she took our order, eyes flicking between me and the silver-haired man standing like a statue behind my chair. Coffee, black, Virgil said calmly. Same, I added. When the drinks came, we sat outside, watching the flow of traffic. You seem restless, Virgil said finally. I've been living with chaos for a month, I said. I'm not used to peace anymore. It feels suspicious. He nodded faintly. Dante's lack of discipline would test anyone's patience. That's putting it nicely, I said, half smiling. He looked straight ahead, expression neutral. And the monkey? Wukong's a walking headache, I said honestly. He's like a kid who learned he can lift mountains and hasn't stopped bragging since. Virgil gave a quiet hum, not disagreeing. We finished our coffee in silence, and I started to feel almost relaxed again, until the sky darkened for half a second. A thunderclap shook the air. When I looked up, lightning streaked across the clouds. From the center of it, a figure descended, golden light glinting off armor and red fabric. Mjolnir spun once before slamming into the ground beside him. Thor landed with his usual confidence, cape fluttering behind him. His expression was bright, his energy loud. Ah, Crimson, he said cheerfully, striding forward. I was told that a warrior named Dante resides with you. I have come to challenge him in honorable combat. People nearby were already pointing and filming. I exhaled quietly. He's not here. Thor blinked. Not here. No, I gave him to Lex Luthor. He frowned, clearly unsure what to make of that. You gave him to the bald one. Yes. Thor blinked again. Strange choice. I wish to test my strength against his. I shrugged. You could spar with someone else. Thor's expression brightened instantly. Do you volunteer? No, I pointed to Virgil. He does. Virgil turned his head slightly, calm but faintly unimpressed. I do. You do, I said. Thor grinned broadly. Excellent. Another swordsman. This will be glorious. Virgil sighed quietly but stood, drawing Yamato with smooth precision. Very well. Thor raised Mjolnir, lightning sparking across his armor. Let us find open ground. I gestured toward the nearby empty training field on the outskirts of the city, a secured zone for superhuman combat testing. Try not to level the skyline, I said dryly. 10 minutes later, the two of them stood opposite each other on the field. The wind blew faintly across the broken terrain. Thor's grin widened. You may strike first. Virgil shook his head once. No need. I watched from a few meters away, arms crossed. The nearby security drones adjusted their cameras, recording every second. Thor charged first, hammer raised high, lightning crackling around him. The ground split under his first step. Virgil didn't move. Thor swung downward with full force. The hammer struck where Virgil stood, except he wasn't there. The blade of Yamato was already drawn and sheathed again in the same instant. A thin line of blue light traced across the air between them. Thor stopped mid-swing, eyes wide. Mjolnir's glow flickered once. Then the lightning died. Thor dropped to one knee, hammer in hand, staring at the thin cut running across the ground in front of him. His armor smoked faintly where Virgil's slash had passed. Virgil looked down at him calmly. You should work on your speed. Thor blinked twice, then started laughing, a booming, genuine laugh that echoed across the field. Magnificent! I have never been defeated so quickly. Virgil didn't respond. He simply turned away, sliding Yamato back into its sheath. I clapped once, slow and dry. Congratulations, you lasted longer than Doomsday. Thor grinned, still kneeling. You have strong allies, Crimson. That was worthy of Asgard. Virgil walked back toward me, expression unchanged. He was slower than I expected. Everyone is slower than you, I said. True. Thor stood, shaking off the dust, clearly unfazed by the loss. We must do this again soon, perhaps with Dante next time. Maybe, I said, though I was already imagining the disaster that would be. Virgil looked at me. Are we finished here? Yeah, I said, glancing at my watch. Let's go before someone else decides to test you. We returned to the city by evening. The streets were calmer again, though a few people still looked at Virgil with curiosity. News of his match with Thor was already trending. The footage had been uploaded from drone recordings within minutes. Mysterious swordsman defeats Thor in one strike. We stopped by a bookstore on the way back. Virgil followed silently, scanning the shelves with mild interest. You read? I asked. When Dante is not around, he said simply. Good policy. I picked up a copy of The Art of War and handed it to him. You'd like this. He examined the cover for a second, then nodded. I'll read it. We bought a few more books and walked home under the orange glow of the setting sun. When we arrived, the apartment was silent again. Blissful silence. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat down on the couch, feeling the calm sink in. Virgil stood by the window, looking out over the city. It's a strange world, he said quietly. Tell me about it, I muttered, taking a sip. The quiet lasted about 5 minutes before my phone buzzed. I checked the screen. A message from Lex Luthor. We need to talk. The monkey just challenged my entire research staff to a tournament. I stared at it for a long second. Then I set the phone down and leaned back in the chair. Virgil looked over. Problems? No, I said tiredly. Just Luthor learning what I already knew. He nodded once. You should have warned him. I did, I said. He thought I was exaggerating. Virgil almost smiled. He'll learn. Eventually. I took another sip of coffee and sighed. At least you're quiet. He inclined his head slightly. Someone in this house should be. Chapter 9. The day peace died. The morning started with an uneasy feeling. Virgil and I stood outside my car, parked in front of LexCorp Tower. The sky over Metropolis was pale grey, clouds hanging low. From the moment we stepped out, something felt off. There was smoke rising from the distance, thick, black, and unmistakably recent. Virgil's eyes narrowed slightly. "That smoke is coming from the main lab," he said in his calm tone, though the edge in his voice said he already knew what we would find. I sighed deeply. Of course it is. We entered the tower. The security gates were open, alarms still blinking red. The receptionist desk was empty. When the elevator doors opened, the damage became obvious. The top floors were half collapsed. Sparks fell from exposed cables. The corridor walls were split open. A massive crater had replaced what used to be the main research lab. And in the center of it all stood Lex Luthor, suit ruined, one sleeve torn, covered in dust. He had a clipboard in one hand and the blank, exhausted expression of a man who had aged 10 years overnight. He turned when he heard us approach. "Crimson," he said flatly. "Take them back." Behind him, two familiar voices echoed. "Hey, boss, miss us," Dante called out cheerfully, waving. Wukong was perched on top of an overturned desk, munching on a banana like nothing was wrong. "We made some improvements. Lex's building was too boring." Dante laughed. "Yeah, we were just testing the strength of his structural design." Lex slowly pinched the bridge of his nose. "They tested it by fighting each other through every floor." Wukong shrugged. "It held up for a while." I rubbed my forehead. "You lasted less than 24 hours, Lex." He stared at me. "You think I didn't try? They broke containment doors rated for nuclear impacts. I had to call Superman to stop them from hitting the power core." Dante grinned proudly. "Hey, but nobody died." Lex's tone was low. "Get them out." I looked at Virgil. I was just starting to like the quiet. Virgil nodded slightly. Peace was temporary. "Yeah," I muttered. "So much for that." I turned to Dante and Wukong. "We're going home." "Cool," Dante said. "Lex's place was fun, though." "Your definition of fun is destruction," I said dryly. Wukong grinned. "Exactly." Lex groaned and rubbed his temples. "I'll send you the repair bill." "I'll frame it," I replied, completely dead inside. Back home, the two immediately reclaimed their usual spots. Wukong was sprawled on the couch upside down, tail swinging lazily over the edge. Dante was tuning his guns while watching an old movie. Virgil sat quietly by the window, pretending not to notice any of it. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, eyes half-lidded. "You're all grounded." Wukong looked up. "What's that mean?" "It means don't break anything else." Dante grinned. "You can't ground adults." "Watch me," I said. They laughed, and I realized arguing was pointless. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself another mug of black coffee, and tried to focus on the small sliver of silence between their chatter. Then the tone came again. Ding. Host new milestone achieved. Reward, summon Kratos. I froze mid-sip, set the cup down slowly and sighed. Of course, because this house wasn't chaotic enough. A pulse of red light filled the living room. Energy rippled across the floor. Dante and Wukong turned to look. From the light stepped Kratos, the ghost of Sparta. Taller than both of them, his pale skin marked with scars and the red tattoo streaking down his face. His expression was grim, heavy as always. The Leviathan axe rested in his right hand. He looked around once, assessing everything, then spoke. "Where am I?" I sighed. "Earth, welcome, you're with me now." He stared at me. "You summoned me." "Yes." "Why?" I gestured toward Dante and Wukong, who were watching him curiously. "To keep them in line." Kratos glanced between them. "These two." Wukong laughed. "You don't look like much." Dante smirked. "Big guy, small talk." Kratos's grip on the axe tightened. "You want to test that?" I raised my voice sharply. No one is testing anything. They all looked at me. I pointed toward the couch. You three stay here. Don't break my house. Virgil, you're coming with me. Wukong looked disappointed. You're leaving already. Yes, I said firmly. And if I come back to a crater, I'm selling all your weapons on eBay. Dante laughed. You'd never. Try me. Kratos grunted, crossing his arms. They will behave. Good, I said, turning toward the door. You're in charge. I left before any of them could respond. Outside, the city air felt lighter, peaceful, even. I could actually hear birds instead of shouting. Virgil followed quietly as usual. We walked along the street for a while, before a familiar voice called out from behind. Crimson. I turned. Bruce Wayne was standing beside a sleek black car, dressed in his usual dark suit. Wayne, I said, what brings you here? I was in the area, he said calmly. You've become quite the topic lately. I gave a half smile. Let me guess, Dante, Wukong, and now Kratos. He nodded once. You attract strange company. I noticed, I said. He gestured toward the car. Come with me. My sons would like to meet you. They've been obsessed with your new game. I blinked once. Your sons play God of War. Constantly, he said. They won't stop talking about it. I sighed. All right, lead the way. Wayne Manor was quiet and massive, like a museum that was somehow also a home. Alfred greeted us at the door with his usual calm smile. Welcome, Mr. Crimson. Master Bruce said you'd be joining us. Thanks, I said. It's good to see a house that's still intact. Bruce glanced sideways at me. That bad? You have no idea. Inside the main hall, 3 of his sons were already waiting. Dick, Jason, and Tim Damien were sitting off to the side with crossed arms, clearly pretending not to care. Jason grinned. Hey, the guy who made God of War. Tim looked eager. We already beat it twice. Dick smiled. It's amazing. You really did something new. Damien muttered. I could have done it faster. Bruce gave him a small look. I laughed lightly. You all play together. Jason nodded. Yeah, I'm Kratos. Tim said, I'm Atreus. Dick smirked, and Damien keeps dying to bosses. Damien glared at him. They're cheap mechanics. I smiled faintly. Sounds familiar. Bruce gestured toward the large entertainment room. Why not join them? They've been waiting for a proper challenge. We sat down together. I picked up a controller, surrounded by 4 Robins who looked more competitive than half the Avengers. 3 hours passed fast. The mansion echoed with laughter, insults, and the occasional argument over which combo was better. Even Bruce cracked a small smile once when Jason shouted at Damien for falling into the same trap twice. When we finally cleared the last boss, they cheered. Tim grinned. Best afternoon ever. Glad to help, I said with a faint smile. Bruce stood. You're welcome here anytime. Careful, I said dryly. You might end up with Dante and Wukong next. Jason laughed. We'd survive, maybe. I stood stretching. Thanks for the invite. I should get going. Bruce walked me to the door. Good luck with your guests. Thanks, I said, not sounding optimistic. It was already dark when Virgil and I returned to my neighborhood. From a distance, I noticed the faint glow in the sky. Smoke again. My step slowed. That better not be what I think it is. Virgil's hand rested casually on Yamato's hilt. It is. As we approached, the full scene came into view. My home was gone. Completely gone. What was once a high-end tower apartment was now a smoking crater surrounded by emergency drones and confused police. Pieces of wall were scattered across several blocks. A broken street lamp sparked near the wreckage. I stopped walking and just stared. I left them alone for 5 hours. Virgil's tone was calm, but I could hear the faint amusement underneath. That was your first mistake. A loud crash echoed from somewhere inside the rubble, then Dante's voice. It was his fault. Wukong's shout followed. You threw the first punch. Kratos' deep tone cut through them both. You are both undisciplined. I pinched the bridge of my nose, breathing in through my teeth. I swear. Dante suddenly emerged from the debris, covered in dust but grinning. Hey, boss, welcome back. Wukong jumped out next to him, waving a broken street sign like a flag. We fixed the place. Kratos stepped out behind them, scowling. They fought over a television remote. I blinked once. You destroyed my home over a remote. Dante shrugged. It got heated. Wukong laughed. It was his fault for changing the channel. Virgil sighed quietly. This is beneath me. Kratos looked at me with his usual seriousness. They are untrainable. I stared at the smoking ruins, then at the three of them standing proudly in front of it. You know what? I said finally. I give up. Dante tilted his head. You sure we can rebuild it? With what? I snapped. Duct tape, Wukong said. Kratos crossed his arms. They need discipline. I pointed at him. You're in charge now. I'm taking a vacation. Virgil nodded. A wise decision. Dante frowned. Oh, come on, it's not that bad. Behind him, a section of the roof collapsed completely, sending dust into the air. I just stared. I'm buying a bunker, I muttered. Wukong scratched his head. Can we help? No, I said flatly. They all looked at each other, then back at me. Dante laughed. You love us. I tolerate you, I corrected. Virgil sheathed Yamato. Barely. Kratos grunted in agreement. They are children. Wukong smirked. Strong children. Destructive children, I said. I turned around and started walking away, not even looking back at the wreckage. Find a hotel or dig a cave, I don't care. Dante called out, Where are you going? Somewhere quiet, I said. Virgil followed silently, leaving the three of them arguing again behind us. As we disappeared into the city lights, I muttered, I miss Lex's exhaustion already. Virgil's lips twitched slightly, his version of a smile. You brought this upon yourself. Yeah, I said, I know. Chapter 10, Magic, Madness, and Saiyans. The morning started the same as every launch day, quiet at first, then filled with the endless sound of notifications. My phone buzzed without pause as the servers went live, and within minutes, Dragon Ball, Ultimate Battle had exploded across every gaming platform. I sat behind my desk with a mug of coffee, watching the analytics rise on my monitor. Sales numbers climbed faster than God of War had. I could already see online comments flooding social feeds. This is insane. He actually added all the transformations. Gogeta versus Vegito is possible now. The game had everything, every era, every fusion, every transformation, all tied into one massive combat system. The trailers alone had caused a frenzy. The actual release had broken half the streaming sites. Virgil stood beside me, as always, silent but observant. His presence had become my only anchor in the daily chaos. Sales are exceeding projections, he said calmly. I noticed, I said, scrolling through the screen. Not that it matters. I just know this means something else is going to happen. It always does. He gave a slow nod. Your luck attracts trouble. Understatement, I muttered, leaning back in my chair. The office was quiet for once, too quiet. My employees had learned to give me space when numbers like these were rolling in. The only sounds were the distant hum of servers and the faint tap of Virgil's boots against the floor as he shifted his stance. Then the air in front of my desk shimmered. Light rippled across the space like a heat wave. Circles of orange and gold spun outward, glowing with intricate sigils. The temperature in the room dropped slightly as sparks of energy flickered off the floor. Virgil's hand moved toward Yamato. The portal completed itself, and from within stepped Dr. Stephen Strange, calm, composed, and visibly annoyed. His cloak hovered slightly behind him, moving on its own like a living creature. He glanced around once before focusing on me. Crimson. I blinked once, setting my coffee down. Dr. Strange. You and I need to talk, he said immediately. That's never a good sign, I said. What happened this time? His eyes narrowed slightly. Your friends. I sighed quietly. Which ones? Strange folded his arms. The demon hunter, the monkey, and the Spartan. I closed my eyes for a second. What did they do? They beat Dormammu. I stared at him blankly. Come again. They entered the dark dimension, Strange said evenly. Without permission. They located Dormammu, provoked him, and then defeated him. Virgil raised an eyebrow faintly. Impressive. Strange turned to him sharply. Impressive isn't the word I'd use. Do you have any idea what kind of cosmic imbalance that can cause? I rubbed the side of my face. How did they even get there? They used your monkey's staff to open a dimensional rift, Strange said dryly. He called it exploring. Of course he did, I muttered. And Dormammu. Gone, Strange said simply. Banished to some untraceable plane. He'll reform eventually, but not soon. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I leave them alone for one day. Strange looked at me, tone sharp. You understand this kind of interference can't continue, yes. You can't just have beings from multiple realms doing as they please. This world has boundaries. I nodded. Trust me, Doctor, if I could keep them from doing anything, I would. You think I like living like this? His eyes narrowed slightly, but the edge of irritation softened a bit. You seem remarkably calm about this. That's because I'm past the point of panic, I said dryly. When your house gets destroyed twice, and the god of war moves into your living room, your threshold for chaos changes. Virgil's voice cut in quietly. I told you leaving them unsupervised was unwise. Yeah, I said, waving him off. You can say I told you so later. Strange's cloak drifted closer, almost studying Virgil. I've sensed your energy before. It's similar to dimensional blades. Virgil inclined his head slightly. You sense correctly. Then perhaps you can help keep them in check, Strange said. Because if this continues, I'll have to get the Ancient One involved. Please don't, I said quickly. Last thing I need is her visiting my office. Strange sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. You're fortunate I intervened before the living tribunal noticed. Wonderful, I muttered. I'll add that to my list of cosmic near-disasters. He gave me a long look. Fix it, Crimson. Keep them under control. Yeah, sure. I'll put them in timeout, I said dryly. The portal behind him began to spin again, preparing to close. And keep them away from my sanctum. The last time the monkey tried to borrow a relic, it took me an hour to undo the mess. Noted, I said. He nodded once, turned, and stepped back through the golden circle. The portal closed with a low hum, leaving faint sparks on the air. The office went quiet again. Virgil was the first to speak. Dormammu. Yep, I said. They beat him. Yep. He gave a small nod, expression unreadable, as expected of them. Don't sound proud, I said, leaning forward and rubbing my face. You're supposed to be the responsible one. I am, he said evenly. Then why does my life feel like a multiversal daycare? He didn't answer. The rest of the morning blurred together. Employees came and went, bringing updates about the launch. Numbers continued climbing. Every global gaming channel was already reviewing Dragon Ball Ultimate Battle as a phenomenon. It should have been a perfect day, but I couldn't enjoy it. Every success I had lately seemed to summon something worse. By noon, I decided to check on the chaos personally. We left the office and drove toward what used to be my neighborhood. now a construction site where my destroyed home was being rebuilt. When we arrived, the workers were gathered in a nervous cluster near the gate. One of them recognized me instantly. "Sir, we have a problem." I sighed. "Which kind?" "The supernatural kind." I looked through the fence and saw the cause immediately. Wukong was sitting on a crane arm, legs dangling, eating fruit like he was on vacation. Dante was leaning against the half-built wall, spinning one of his guns idly. Kratos stood beside the foundation pit, silently watching the workers move. When they noticed me, Wukong waved enthusiastically. "Boss, we're helping rebuild." "By doing what?" I asked. "Supervising." Dante grinned. Kratos yelled at the foreman, so everyone's working faster now. I looked at Kratos. "You yelled." He crossed his arms. They were inefficient. Virgil sighed quietly beside me. Why am I not surprised? I looked at all three of them, feeling the beginning of a headache. "So, you beat Dormammu." Dante smirked. "Yeah, that guy was annoying." Wukong grinned. "He said he was a god, so I had to prove him wrong." Kratos nodded. "He was weak." I stared for a moment, then said flatly, "You realize Doctor Strange came to yell at me because of you?" Wukong tilted his head. "Who's that?" "The wizard who stops reality from collapsing." Dante shrugged. "He'll get over it." I rubbed my temples. I need a vacation. Later that afternoon, I returned to the office again with Virgil. The moment we stepped inside, every employee went silent. They were all watching the live broadcast of Dragon Ball Ultimate Battle. The in-game leaderboard already had millions of players. I stopped to glance at the screen. On the top 10 list, half the usernames were suspiciously familiar. Number 1, Sun Wukong Real. Number 2, Demon Hunter Dante. Number 3, God of War 69. I stared blankly. They're playing. Virgil looked as well, his tone flat. They're winning. Of course they are. I walked to my desk, sat down, and placed my face in my hands for a second. Then I looked up at the screen again. Wukong's character had just beaten Gogeta in under 30 seconds. Dante's in-game avatar was spamming taunts. Kratos had apparently created his own version of Broly. Virgil tilted his head slightly. At least they're staying occupied. Until they find a way to enter the game world physically, I muttered. Is that possible? With them, probably, I said. The phone on my desk rang suddenly. I picked it up. Crimson Games, I said. A nervous voice answered, Sir, this is the Metropolis Hero Response Unit. We're receiving energy spikes again near your old property. They're unnatural. I pinched my nose. I'll handle it. I hung up and looked at Virgil. We're going home. He nodded. When we arrived, the workers were gone again. In their place, the entire ground was scorched black. 3 craters glowed faintly. Standing at the center were Dante, Wukong, and Kratos, again. Wukong had his staff stuck into the ground like a flagpole. Dante was sitting cross-legged nearby, drinking from a soda can. Kratos was sharpening his axe with complete calm. I stopped a few meters away. Please tell me you didn't just fight again. Dante looked up. We were testing our strength against fusion forms. What fusion forms? Wukong grinned. The ones in your game. I blinked. You pulled Dragon Ball characters into real life. Dante nodded proudly. Only for a few minutes. Piccolo was cool, Wukong added. He gave me a compliment before he disappeared. I closed my eyes slowly. I don't even know how to react anymore. Virgil crossed his arms. They're hopeless. Kratos looked up. The warrior with yellow hair was strong. I muttered under my breath, Please tell me that wasn't Goku. It was, Dante said cheerfully. We fought him and Vegeta at once. Good match. I looked at Virgil, voice dry. You see why Strange hates me? He gave a quiet nod. Understandable. I sighed. All right, listen up. No more fighting gods, demons, or anime characters. Got it. Wukong raised his hand. What about small fights? No. Dante grinned. Training matches. No. Kratos said calmly. War is eternal. Not in my backyard, I said sharply. They all looked at each other, then nodded reluctantly. Good, I said. I'm locking the house this time. Wukong laughed. You can't lock us out. I'll try anyway. Virgil looked faintly amused. You're wasting effort. I know, I said, but let me pretend I have control for 5 minutes. By evening, we were all back inside. The city lights glowed outside the windows. Wukong was still bragging about his match against Vegeta. Dante was humming to himself, pretending not to listen. Kratos sat silently in a chair, eyes closed, probably meditating. I leaned back in my chair at the desk, staring at the newest set of reports. Dragon Ball Ultimate Battle had officially become the most successful game launch in history. I should have been thrilled. Instead, I just felt tired. Virgil stood by the window again, his reflection faint in the glass. You're too calm, he said quietly. I ran out of emotions weeks ago, I said. He nodded once. Understandable. My phone buzzed again. A new text from Dr. Strange. Next time, I'm sending Wang to babysit. I typed back, good luck surviving that job. When I set the phone down, I looked at the room again. Dante tossing his gun up and catching it idly, Wukong spinning his staff lazily, Kratos sitting motionless. I sighed. If peace exists, it's allergic to me. Virgil gave a faint nod. It appears so. Chapter 11, Heroes, Gods, and Headaches. The morning began too early. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. By the time I finally answered, Tony Stark's voice was on the line before I even said hello. Crimson, he said, I hope you've got some kind of leash for your crew, because you and your people are being called to the new Watchtower Avengers base. Every major hero in the world wants a word. I sighed, sitting up in bed. Which heroes? All of them, Tony said. And I mean all of them. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Lantern, the whole Justice League plus the Avengers, the Titans, and half of SHIELD. You've made quite an impression, kid. I rubbed my eyes. Let me guess. Because my friends beat Dormammu, flattened my neighborhood, and now everyone's panicking about a dimensional collapse. Bingo, Tony replied. Meeting S in 2 hours. Bring your superpowered roommates. Oh, and don't touch anything this time. He hung up before I could reply. I stared at the phone for a few seconds, then exhaled heavily. Virgil, I called. He appeared in the doorway almost instantly, already dressed and polished as always. Another problem. Conference, I said. The Watchtower Avenger Tower, mandatory attendance. He nodded once, and the others. I looked past him toward the living room, where Dante, Wukong, and Kratos were currently fighting over the TV remote again. The noise was unbearable. Shouting, laughing, the sound of something breaking. All of them, I said dryly. They're coming too. Virgil didn't even question it. He just turned to look at them. Get ready, he said simply. Dante groaned. Where are we going now? To a meeting, I said, with every superhero on Earth. Try not to start a fight this time. Wukong tilted his head. What's a meeting? Kratos answered flatly. A gathering of people who talk too much. That's about right, I said. Now move. The Watchtower Avenger Tower was a massive orbital structure floating just above Earth's atmosphere, a mix of Kryptonian and Stark technology merged into one fortress. Getting there wasn't hard. Stark had sent transport coordinates that teleported us directly into the docking chamber. When the light faded, we stood in a gleaming hall lined with silver and blue panels. The logo of the Justice League blended with the Avengers insignia on the far wall. Standing at the entrance was Superman himself, arms crossed, expression calm but serious. Beside him were Wonder Woman, Batman, and Captain America. Tony was hovering nearby, adjusting his helmet display. Superman spoke first. "Crimson, thank you for coming." "Didn't have a choice," I said lightly. Batman's eyes flicked toward the group behind me, Dante, Wukong, Virgil, and Kratos. His jaw tightened slightly. "You brought them." "Of course," I said. "They're half the reason we're all here." Tony grinned. "Great. Now we can see if anyone else survives the week." Wukong was already looking around in awe. "Nice place. You could fit an entire army in here." Dante stretched, yawning. "You think they got coffee?" Kratos looked unimpressed. "Too clean." Virgil remained silent, his gaze scanning the structure. Wonder Woman stepped forward, composed as always. "We appreciate your cooperation, Crimson. However, your associates have caused significant disruptions across multiple realms. We need to establish boundaries." I gave her a small nod. "Fair, they're not easy to manage." Superman looked at Dante. "You were the one who fought Doomsday." "Yeah," Dante said, smirking. "Fun guy, screamed a lot." Flash zipped into view beside him. "You're telling me you beat Doomsday? The same Doomsday that—" "Yeah," Dante interrupted casually. "That one." Flash blinked. "Okay, wow, no offense, but that's—" "Awesome," Dante offered. "Terrifying," Flash finished. Wukong grinned, spinning his staff lazily. "I like this place already. So many strong people." Batman's voice cut through. "No fighting." Wukong looked genuinely offended. "I wasn't going to start anything." "You were thinking about it," Batman said. Dante laughed. "He's good." Behind them, Kratos folded his arms. This tower would not withstand combat between gods. Tony turned his head. "Hey, can we not talk about blowing up my space station?" Superman gestured toward the central meeting chamber. "Let's take this discussion inside." The chamber itself was enormous, a circular hall with a long glass table running through the center. Holographic displays floated above it, showing multiple screens of recent events: Doomsday's defeat, Dormammu's banishment, and the energy readings from my destroyed house. Around the table sat over 30 heroes. The Justice League on one side, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman,